features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the African bush. We've got fresh lion tracks. It's a beautiful morning and hopefully the big cats abound. This is Safari Live. Ready?
Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Welcome to an overcast morning. It's quite warm, but there's fresh lion tracks on quarantine. We've been looking for them. This is very exciting. My name is Brent Smith. I have VM on camera. And you can see Senzo and Jamie over there. They're also having a quick look for the lions. Now, all the wildebeest and impala look quite relaxed. And James and Herbie are on foot with those tracks, so we're just doing a wider loop around them. And remember, if you've got any questions for us, hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. You going to go look for Shongile?
Yeah, I'm actually going to pop past the hyena den.
Okay.
See if they're there. The wildies were looking at a nyala.
So
the level of alertness was a false alarm.
Silly wildebeest. That's why sometimes they're called the clowns of the bushveld. But
bye, have fun, good luck.
You too, good luck with the hyenas and the leopards. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep wider. Herbie and James are on the tracks over there, so we're going to go around. And there is, of course, that level of alertness from the wildebeest could, looking at a nyala, means they could have spotted a lion a little bit earlier. So we're just going to go very slowly down here. Now, also, Herbie said he heard what he thinks were the Nkuhumas roaring earlier this morning, but he said it sounded like they were quite far to the west, but they could be on the move. So we're going to just check around the Vuyatela Dam and the dam cam quickly, but let's go see what those tracks are looking like, how fresh they are, with James on Bushwalk.
Yes, indeed, we do have tracks, everybody. Good morning, and I hope that you are having a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, whatever it is that you are experiencing temporally this morning. We are on tracks, as Brent said, and just to give you an idea of how close those tracks are, of course, to where we live, this is the sign to the camp, or the two tourist camps. That's some free advertising there for Djuma. Good. And here are the tracks. Now, while you look at them, it's beholden on me to say to you that my name is James Hendry. Yes, it is. And we are as live as Brent and Jamie, which means you must talk to us. Hashtag Safari Live is how you do that. 3 lionesses came walking down this road during the course of the night. Now, they walked straight past the camp, and we're going to continue walking down this road on them. Herbert is in front of us. He is making sure that, well, we don't stumble upon them. I personally do not think we're going to find these lions, and I'll tell you why. I heard lions calling very far in the eastern distance just before we started our walk, and I think that it could well be that whatever lions those were, these ones have gone to join them. Anyway, time will tell as we go along, and if we don't find these lions, we'll almost certainly find something else that will be quite interesting. Now, for those of you who don't know, Herbert is our tracker extraordinaire in front. He's also the security detail of our walk, which means that while I'm staring down the barrel of the lens, not paying attention to what's going on around me, he is checking to see what is happening so that we are not set upon by a buffalo or perhaps an elephant or perhaps even a dwarf mongoose. Who knows? A rabid dwarf mongoose? Be very unpleasant indeed. All right, let's head back to Jamie. She hasn't said good morning to you, but for in the pre-show, and she'd like to do that now.
I would very much like to do that right now. A very good morning to all of you and welcome to a cloudy but actually quite warm sunrise safari. My name is Jamie. This morning Senzo is on camera with me. You ready for this, Senzo? And we have all sorts of, in theory, exciting things planned. Obviously, Brent and James working together to track down that lion. I figure I'm probably a bit superfluous in that effort, and it would probably be better for me to spend some time moving a little bit away from that area, but we'll keep an eye out for him as well. Now, don't forget on this lovely, lovely morning to send through your hashtag Safari Live Twitter questions. That sentence was a bit Yoda-like, but you know what I mean. That is how you can get hold of us in order to send through your questions and your comments. Now, I can go backwards quickly. I am on my way once again to the hyena den. Every time I've paid a visit there, they have not been home. And I'm hoping that today might be different, that today they might be here. There's tracks up and down the road. Ribbon's been around. We know that the other hyenas were with first Mvula and then Tingana with the impala kill a little bit to the north of us. And I'm hoping that they might be home. Let us go and see. Somebody's been at work trimming this road, for which we are very grateful, because it was usually quite a mission to get ourselves in here with our large antenna sitting up at the top of the vehicle. But somebody's come through and trimmed. Alright, lots of hyena tracks. Okay, Ribbon, please be here. I still haven't seen these cubs. Not once, since I've been back. I'm starting to take it personally. It's ridiculous. Every time I come in, I just have a feeling today is going to be the same, because I can't see a hyena. They just don't like me anymore. And Kirsty's suggested a song, but let's finish our... I don't quite know what a spotted hyena song would be. I'm sure there's a childhood song somewhere about laughing hyenas. But it doesn't matter, because I can't even serenade them because they're not here. Oh, there they are. Yes! The song, imaginary song worked. Well done, Senzo. Yay! Hi, guys. Oh, I'm so excited. Hello, you. Oh, you've got so big. Hello, Ribbon. It's alright, sweetheart. It's okay, sweetheart. There we go. Our hyenas are home once again. And flop, down goes Ribbon as the two little ones suckle away. Okay. I cannot tell you how relieved I am. Finally having a chance to see them. Though despite their terrible reputation, spotted hyenas are probably my favorite predator, although it is hard to choose. You know, when you think about leopards and wild dogs. And certainly, hyenas are probably not conventionally as pretty, although nobody can deny that the cubs are utterly adorable. They look like little bear cubs with those massive ears. Listen to, I don't know, I'm going to try and be quiet so you can hear the sounds they're making. As I said that, they went quiet. Little sidelong glance in my direction. They're niggling at each other, trying to find a good and suitable position. And of course, these little hyena cubs will already have their own established hierarchy between siblings. I still haven't spent enough time with them to truly get an idea as to just what that hierarchy is. Their mum is Ribbon, patiently sitting with them, sleeping away. Hey girl, shame that can't be very comfortable, because of course hyena cubs are born with fully erupted teeth, so that must be very uncomfortable for her. Welcome to Muhammad, and thank you for sending through your question. As you can see, these babies are still very much reliant upon their mum, but Muhammad would like to know how long before they are able to leave her. Our spotted hyenas actually lactate and suckle their cubs for a considerable period of time, sometimes over a year. It depends very much upon the hyena. Sometimes it is 8 months, sometimes it's over a year, sometimes up to a year and a half that the females will suckle their cubs. And that means that they actually have a relatively long dependency period. And you're probably looking at hyena cubs only becoming independent at around about a year and a half old. However, they do start to follow their mums at around about between 10 to 12 months old, particularly if their mother is a lower ranking female. And the reason behind that is, in theory, in a very packed den site, only the higher ranking females will bring food back to the den for the cubs to start eating solid meat. But for the lower ranking females, they've actually got to take their cubs with them. And if these are female cubs, if there is a female with them, they could end up staying in the clan with their mother for the rest of their lives. They might not ever move away from her, so in a way, whilst they're not still dependent on her, they're still with her for the period of their entire lifespan, which I think is quite special. If it's a little male, even then, it might stay around and be part of the clan, although its interactions will be very different to its female sibling, because male spotted hyenas automatically fall below the ranking of the females. They're much smaller and generally more submissive. That little cub is falling asleep on its feet, suckling. The other one is stretched out, and you can see them pushing with their paws up against their mum, and that of course is to stimulate milk production. The little cub's eyelids are drooping while it suckles. The lovely thing about spotted hyena dens usually is that it's not just a place to raise babies, it's actually a social hub. And sad, you want to know how often the other members of the clan will come and visit the den site. Relatively regularly, and although we haven't seen much of that interaction yet, it's very often a way of basically connecting with the rest of the clan members, reaffirming the bonds, reaffirming the hierarchy, just in general. So I'm sure that overnight, I'm sure that these cubs have already met several members of the hyena clan itself. They've probably come through to visit. I've seen lots of tracks coming in and out. So they probably even come through, a member of the clan could come through once every day or every 2 days to come and say hello to the little cubs and to come and greet their mother. So it is very much a social hub, and what I'm looking forward to as these cubs grow up is I'm hoping that with the sort of the time period being correct, I'm hoping that we might actually get several different ages of cubs now at the den site itself. So when Madam and Pretty, and even Scarback actually, who probably are next in line to have cubs, just in terms of time from when they last had cubs, Pretty is probably next along with Scarback, because Pretty's last cub was born in November 2015. Aptly named November, because it was just easier to keep track of them that way. So I would say, and Corky actually, sorry, I forgot, Corky actually had a litter of cubs before Madam. So there's a possibility that as these cubs grow older, or grow up a little bit, that Pretty, Corky and Scarback could all be pregnant, and that's what I'm hoping for, because then we get a lot more of activity around the hyena den itself, and then we can look forward to learning and observing some of the more intricate aspects of hyena den or hyena clan dynamics. And that's basically how we learnt and how we came to grips with the hierarchy as we understand it, was just by sitting at the den site and watching the interaction of the hyenas with each other. I'm looking forward to that. That's what I'm hoping for. And once these cubs have finished their breakfast, my more immediate excitement is to see whether or not they come up to say hello. Caro, I should know this off the top of my head. Caro would like to know how many teeth hyena have. Leopard has 30. Oh, teats! I'm sorry, not teeth. Oh, well, saved by the mishearing of the question. I'll come back to teeth in a bit. Sorry, you want to know how many teats, how many nipples the hyenas have? 2. They have 2. There have been cases of hyenas having 3 cubs, giving birth to 3 cubs. It's very unusual. The general average number is 2, sometimes only 1, particularly if the birthing process has been particularly hard for the mother. So she's only got 2, and there is always a bit of squabbling over who gets to have the dominant sort of position in suckling between the cubs. So 1 at the bottom, 1 at the top, as you can see. I mean when she's lying on her side, obviously. Hey, little ones. And hyena milk, some of the richest of all of the mammals that we get out here, which is why these cubs grow up so incredibly quickly. And the one thing about a hyena den is flies. Senzo is getting them as well. I've got them all fluttering around my head. I'm going to sit patiently and wait for these gorgeous cubs to finish their breakfast, but I'm sure you're all wondering about the lion search. Let's go and hear about it from James.
You think they're close? Did she say live? Did she? Hello, everybody. Herbert reckons that these lions are not too far away now. I'm in 2 minds. I mean, I 99% of the time go with exactly what Herbert said, but there was a track that had an antlion on top of it, which means that, well, here's an antlion. You can see their tracks. They've been moving around here during the course of the night. You see them here? This is where they live, in these little holes. And they are, in case you didn't know, the larval form of something that looks a little bit like a dragonfly, but isn't. And what they do is they eat ants, and they dig these little pits into which the ants fall, and then they grab them and eat them. And on top of one of the lion tracks, one of these pits has been constructed. Not this one, it's a little bit further back. So that indicates to me that these tracks could be a little bit older than they look. They look pretty steamy fresh. They're very well defined in the substrate here. And that normally means that, you know, they're fresh, except there's no wind at all, there's no weather movement, there's no moisture, which means that they can remain fairly untouched. They can look pretty shiny new for a long time. So let's keep going down the road. They've walked straight down here, and Herbert is now, well, he's on them again. He hasn't been off them, of course. Here you can see there was some lying down. You can see they've rubbed themselves against the side of the road there. I'm not going to demonstrate because, well, I don't want to get too dirty at this stage of the day. And they've got up and carried on walking. There's been a little bit more lying down. There is a smell of buttered popcornish type stuff, so they could have been marking territory or just going to the loo, of course. And for those of you who don't know, the smell of the big cat's urine is often confused with that of a cinema. Because apparently it smells like buttered popcorn. I don't think it really smells too much like that, but yes, I do know what people mean when they say that. So that's where they were. 3 females coming down the road here. Almost certainly the females of the Nkuhuma Pride, and the reason I therefore think that they could have gone quite a long way from where they are now is that, or where these tracks are now, is that of course they were probably on the hunt and they are not moving with the cubs. The cubs are not with them, and so that could easily mean that they've moved a great distance and gone back to the cubs wherever they happen to have left them. But who knows? We might be lucky. We might go round the corner and see their tawny heads stick up above the grass, and that would be just fantastic. One more track over here. We've got a hippopotamus track, which means we're going to have to be very careful. So while we're being very careful, let's go back to Jamie and the 2 little black hyena cubs.
Not so black anymore, actually. They've got their spots now. You can actually clearly see the spots on their skin and on their fur. And those are showing through very, very clearly. And by 3 months old, and these guys must be getting close to that age, all of the black around their fur will pretty much have vanished, and we'll start to see their spot patterns clearly. Now, even now, while we look at them, you can see those spots are relatively indistinct, and there's lots of darkness around the fur, but even now, those spot patterns are established. That will be the same for the rest of their lives, like a fingerprint, essentially, like a human being's fingerprint. And as they grow larger, you'll be able to start to see the spots sort of stretching apart, but the spot pattern will remain exactly the same. Or plunking down. Or a little bit of niggling at each other, a little bit of kicking, and just generally trying to get comfortable. Red, good question. You're wondering biologically what will stop a mother lactating for the cubs? That's a good question. It comes at a point where she's introduced them to meat and they're spending more and more time feeding off solid food rather than her milk. And as far as I know, this lactation process is actively stopped by the female, not consciously, but as she starts to wean the cubs, as she starts to refuse to let them suckle, the lack of suckling motion will actually be the stimulus in order to stop them from lactating. Sorry, the Game Drive radio is very busy this morning. It's distracting me. So, with human beings, if females choose or mothers choose to breastfeed for longer, they will continue to lactate. If they choose to stop and wean their children off breast milk, they'll stop lactating earlier than those that continue to breastfeed their babies. And as far as I know, it works the same with animals, except they have an instinctive feel for when it's time to stop lactating and when it's time to start refusing the cubs access to the milk. And it's a difficult time for any young animal, and you often get tantrums. You see it with elephants. The young calves scream. Sometimes when you hear those elephant screams during the night on the Djuma Dam camera, that's an elephant baby being weaned, and they have a proper weaning tantrum. Sometimes they go running around, bashing into trees, throwing things. It really is a proper full-on tantrum, and the same applies to hyena cubs. They will also start to make this powerful squealing noise. It's actually termed squeeing, which is a bit of a silly word, but it's called squeeing. And it's high-pitched whiny, and the cubs will follow their mum and basically whine at her in desperation, trying to get her to feed them. You can imagine it's very confusing. And different animals wean their babies at different times. Hyenas are actually very unusual for predators because, generally speaking, lions, leopards, cheetah, wild dogs, those babies will start contortion. Is that very comfortable, little one? Yeah. Lions, leopards, they'll all wean their cubs relatively soon. I mean, a leopard cub is weaned at 3 months old and feeding off solid food, whereas hyenas go on for such an extended period of time. And that's one of the connections to the idea or the theories as to why spotted hyena females have evolved to be bigger than the males. It's the big mother theory. The bigger she is, the more milk she can provide and the longer she can provide it for. And one of the best ways, as perhaps some athletes, not that I'm casting any aspersions, but one of the best ways to get bigger if you're a lady is hormones. And in particular, male hormones, androgen, testosterone, those hormones. And that's one of the reasons put forward as to the theory as to why female spotted hyenas are so much larger than the males. Of course, it comes with its disadvantages. They can suckle for longer, but they've got that very peculiar genital opening, which is a fusion of the urethra and the vaginal tract, and they give birth through that. And it basically looks like it's a pseudo-penis. And it's a very tricky process for them, and that's why often, especially for new mothers, you find that they only give birth to one, and possibly even no cubs alive, because it's such a tricky process for them. And this girl here, the one who's dozing away while her cubs sleep, this is her first litter of cubs, as far as we know. Welcome to Maria. Hold on, let's just let these cubs talk. Okay, they're finished talking now. Good morning, Maria. Good question. Maria would like to know if hyena body parts are sometimes used in muti, in local medicine, or if not here in South Africa, elsewhere. Yes, not to the same extent that lion bones are used, or rhino horn, or of course elephant tusks, although elephant tusks is more of an ornamental thing than it is a medicinal thing. They are used. They're actually quite regularly used by obviously unscrupulous people, but unscrupulous even for animal part traders, as a replacement for lion bones. So basically to try and fool people into thinking that they are buying lion bones for whatever reason it may be. And it's almost invariably in those sorts of things, in those sorts of use of medicinal animal parts, it's almost invariably some kind of fertility medicine, or it is some kind of hangover cure, or for some reason, sort of a general tonic for wellness. And the same applies for lion bones and therefore potentially hyena bones. There are certain places, I think, if I remember correctly, where hyena teeth are also valued in terms of amulets, essentially, or as part of those sorts of things. Sometimes the bones are also used in Sangoma bone throwing. So the process of predicting the future or casting spells, as it were, it's used by chucking bones onto the ground along with other seed pods and so on. And sometimes hyena bones, particularly the phalanges of the paws, are used. I'm not sure if this is such a macabre topic, but it's a good question. I'm not sure if their legs or their tails are ever used. I imagine that it's not quite as bad as the trade in things like lion bones. There's a much larger trade for those sorts of things. Hyena's biggest threat is loss of habitat and being treated as vermin by farmers. So essentially, as soon as they see a hyena, shooting it in case it goes for their livestock. Fortunately, that's not a fate that our hyenas have to worry about at all. They are perfectly protected where we are, and I don't think we've ever had a case of hyena poaching in this particular area. And on that slightly happier return to a subject, let's go and find out what Brent is up to.
Well, we found tracks of the Nkahuma Pride. Unfortunately, they didn't dally on our boundary for very long, and they popped into the west, into Sibambili, and apparently they have now been found about 2 kilometers inside. So we've left that area, and we're coming to give our James and Herbie and Batman a hand. So they're still on those lion tracks, they're still heading north, so we're checking the northern boundary. Now, Jamie's just been, what was that? Chatting about hyenas and being used for medicine. And well, strange enough, hyenas play a very important role in a lot of African folklore, and depending on where you are. Now, probably some of the most sinister hyena of folklore and whatnot comes from Zambia, in particular around the Luangwa Valley. Now, in a lot of African cultures, hyenas are said to be the witches' pets. So witches don't ride broomsticks in Africa, they ride hyenas, and they are able to transform these hyenas into human form and use them to commit murder and other sinister and nefarious goings on. And one of the more famous, it's hyena human cases happened in South Luangwa in Zambia, and there was a hyena that killed, I think it was about 6 or 7 people before it was shot. But it turned out she was very, very old, very big, but it was, a lot of people were convinced that it was actually a pet hyena, one of the bad witches. So good witches don't have hyenas to ride around on, only bad ones, the ones who practice umaloy or umtagati, black magic. So that's where a hyena has quite an important role to play, or has played an important role in traditional folklore. Now, I know I've told this story before, but some of you might not have heard it. So it's not very nice, or it's a bit of a naughty story, and it is about a hyena in southern Tanzania. Now, during the colonial era, they were forming some of the game reserves that now make up the national parks in southern Tanzania, and of course things were done quite differently then, and they were forcibly removing some local villages, and the villagers just point blank refused to leave. And the state vet and the head game warden got together, and after maybe one too many apple juices, they devised a plan to move the people out of the area around what is now Ruaha National Park, and they darted a hyena. And well, speaking of hyenas, let's go look at one with Jamie.
Coming to us. Now look at this. Our little cubs have come right up to the vehicle. Hello, little ones, with their bright and curious eyes. Yes, you two. Hi. Hi. What have you got to say for yourself? I'm being very careful how I move. Oh, is that scary? Oh, is that so scary? Look how wobbly their back legs still are. They still haven't fully got the strength in them yet. But yeah, they're coming right up to the vehicle now, and over the next few months, it's behavior that we get to see. Their curiosity just constantly grows and expands to the point that sometimes we have to intervene at a hyena den just to stop them from chewing on the vehicles. They do like to do that. But fascinatingly, they never do it as adults. So as Ribbon, probably the mother, she probably grew up doing this, walking right up to safari vehicles, but she'll never ever ever do it now. So it's not behavior that we're worried about that they're going to learn and then start doing it on a regular basis. Look at this cub. What is it digging in? Pile of elephant dung. Does that smell nice? All the new smells. Or is that just grass that your mom has moved about? You've got some on your schnoz. Yes, you do. Hello. Yolf. I'm being very careful because I don't have a door. So I'm being very careful to keep my movements very slow because they're going to pick up on them. I'm just going to turn my body slightly to the right. There we go. It's all right. It's okay. You two look so different. I know that sounds completely bizarre, but because we look at them all the time, this one's face is much longer than the other. Yes, talking about you. Yes, wipe your nose. Oh, itchy ear. This is what I love about spotted hyena cubs. If you look into their eyes, there's something seriously bright looking back at you. That's still learning, still full of inquisitiveness. It's okay. And it's also fun to watch them egg each other on. So when one gets closer, then the other feels emboldened, and so on. So they keep encouraging each other, or nipping each other, whichever way it happens to be. And of course, when they find themselves a toy, a piece of bone or a piece of stick, then it becomes a case of what the other one has, I want. Oh. Cub gave Ribbon a fright, Ribbon got a fright, Ribbon gave Cub a fright. Cub ran back to the den. And back to sleep. And here comes the little cub wandering back, probably feeling a bit sheepish. While our cub digs through a pile of grass, obviously searching for something interesting. Andrew, you say how many hyena cubs does a hyena have at a time? And that 2 seems very low. Remember that whenever you've got a case of extended investment, somebody's being brave, extended investment in offspring, so years worth of suckling and so on, you'll find that the number of individuals will be relatively low. So an elephant, for example, only really has 1 baby at a time. The hyenas generally have 2. Sometimes one dies during the birthing, the labor process, because it is one that's very complicated. And there are a few recorded cases of hyenas having 3 cubs and all 3 cubs surviving to adulthood. But that's quite unusual because there's a lot of competition over access to mom's milk. So a lot of the time, the weaker cub, if it's a male, for example, a weaker cub might actually not get the access to food that it needs to survive. So it's unusual for all 3 to make it to adulthood. Yeah, they're going to come back now. They're going and exploring. Look how brave they are. Look at you. Was it fun? That big outside world. The other fun part to watch with these hyena cubs at this age is their adult behavior. You see how that one's sniffing the blade of grass and nibbling on it? They actually at this age start to imitate the adults by trying to anal paste on the grass blades as well. So, you use Mom as a jungle gym. So hyenas anal paste a substance onto grass blades in order to mark their territory and to basically stay in contact with other hyena clan members. Off it goes again. Are you coming to say hello again? Well, you must find our tires fascinating. All the smells of everywhere we've been. But yes, the hyenas will imitate that behavior. They'll also try to call like the adults, which I love, when they do their little whooping contact call. What you found? What you doing, eh? What you doing? Now, Alfred, while we watch the cubs, and I'm keeping my voice down just because they're coming right up to us, I'm going to try and keep my movements slow as well. Sorry, I'm not going to look at you just because I want to keep an eye on what they're doing. Alfred, no, a hyena clan structure is actually very different to that of a wild dog. A wild dog's family structure is actually quite similar to that of wolves in the States and in Europe, or sort of in the North Americas and in Europe, in that they have an alpha male and an alpha female. How cool is this? They're right up close to us. Yes. Hello. Hyena clans are very, very different. So rather than having an alpha male and an alpha female, they have a slightly more complex structure. So all of the females are dominant over the males, whereas with wild dogs, the males are actually larger than the females. And it is purely matriarchal. So it's led by a female, it's led by the matriarch, and then the status of the females below her is determined by their birthright. So if she has cubs, they're females, they're going to be high-ranking. If a low-ranking female has cubs, they will be low-ranking. So in a sort of a rough order, what you got there? A rough order of our clan's hierarchy as we understand it would be Madam, and below that would be Pretty, below that would be Corky, below that would be Corky's daughter Ribbon, who is the mother of these cubs, below that would be Scarback, and below that, right at the bottom in the terms of female hierarchy, would be Gwen, who had cubs at the den site not far away from here, and who has since completely vanished. I'm sure she's still around there, I see her tracks all the time. As for these two, well, we've yet to determine exactly where they're going to stand, but they are going to inherit Ribbon's status as somewhere sort of in the middle of the clan hierarchy. Look how bow-legged they are. That is ridiculous. You can see how underdeveloped the muscles are at the back rather than the front. All of that time and development has gone into their jaws and their head and their front quarters. The back takes a little bit of time to catch up. The males are always lower ranking than the females, but that doesn't mean that they don't play an important role. And sons of the matriarch will inherit a slightly higher status than the other males, but they play an important role in keeping the clan territory safe and constantly contact calling. They actually tend to do a lot more moving than the females do, which is important in maintaining the clan's territory. Oh, you're going to get lost in that long grass. Look at you, vanishing. You see what I mean about the two of them and their behavior egging each other on. Where one goes, the other follows. And that will slowly start to change as they get older and more independent. But for now, they're basically a double trouble team. One's definitely larger than the other. Oh, Rachel. Good question. Rachel would like to know what exactly is anal paste while we watch these cubs explore their world. It's basically a mucousy concoction, so water mixed with protein. See, I want that stick. I didn't want it. I didn't know I wanted it, but now that you have it, I want it. Give it to me. Sorry, I'm talking about anal paste, and the cubs are just being so adorable. I can't reposition, unfortunately. We'll just have to wait for them to pop out again. Now, anal paste is basically a mixture of pheromones, proteins, essentially, and water. So it's of a similar consistency to, it's quite revolting. It's a similar consistency to sort of a snot-like substance. I don't know how else to term it. and it sits on the blade of grass, and within the scent of that hyena anal paste are all kinds of interesting facts about that hyena. Hey Mom, what you doing? So its age, its sex, whether or not it is reproductively active yet, or if it is in estrus, if it's a female. It's basically, we've spoken about this with rhino middens and all sorts of other things, but it's kind of like a Facebook status update for that hyena. And every other hyena that comes past will have a sniff. Often they'll anal paste on top of it. Interestingly enough, spotted hyena's anal paste is one color. That of a brown hyena contains two different sections. One which is all of that information I told you about. The other is a little brown blob on top of it, and that is a timestamp. So how old the anal paste is. Oh dear. Wait, Mom, we want to come with. Mommy, can we come with you this time? Your mom's not going to let you come with you. Shame. This is always probably the hardest time of the morning for the hyena cubs, because Mom goes off on an adventure. Actually, probably not an adventure. She goes off to go and have some peace and quiet and sleep the day away, and she leaves the cubs at the den site. But the older they get, the harder that process becomes for her, because they want to follow, so she's got to bring them back again, which is what she's going to do now. If she doesn't, a lot of the time instinct will just kick in. And if they get too far from the den site itself, the cubs start to get anxious, and then they turn around and they run back home. So that instinct of self-preservation is there. It's just battling with their natural sense of curiosity at the moment. So we're going to sit tight, because if I start the engine now with them so far from the den site, they're going to get a serious fright. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want them to associate us with anything bad. And so far we've done, between all of us as guides, we've got to the point where they not trust, but they see us, trust is maybe not the right word, but they don't see us as something harmful or dangerous, and we definitely don't want to change that. Now come on. Now we've got to sit and just wait patiently, but when they come back, they're going to come back fast. James, you want to know what age they'll be able to successfully anal paste? I think they're probably already doing it successfully at a young age. I think they're probably transferring a little bit of a blob of something. As to whether or not it's fully developed, that sounds so weird, a fully developed anal paste. That's not quite what I meant, but you get the idea. I guess at around about a year old, they'll be contributing properly, would be my guess, just because they get to that large age. But I might be wrong. It might be tied into when they reach sexual maturity at around about 2 or so. 2, a little, maybe even a little bit older. So it could be connected to when they reach full sexual maturity. So when the females start to go into estrus and the males are capable of producing offspring. Whether or not they get a chance to is a different story. Doo-doo-doo. She might have gone just to lie down somewhere further that way, in which case the cubs might stay with her. I'm just going to patiently wait and see whether or not they come dashing back. So while we do that, let's jump back on board so that Brent can finish off his story about hyenas.
But hello, I've got some, as I said, some not so good news. It seems like, or at least one of those male lions has crossed into Buffalo's Hook, but James and Herbie are on the tracks. There were 2 females and 1 male, so maybe they've split, and hopefully Bushwalk has some success with those lions. We're just doing a little meander down through the eastern sections. All the roads are dragged, so any tracks we're going to find now are going to be from last night. So we're just looking very carefully. Now back to the story from Tanzania and the naughty game warden and the naughty vet. So for those of you who might have missed the beginning, basically things were very different during colonial times, and they were trying to get villagers to move out of what is now Ruaha National Park, and the villagers were refusing to move. So I think after lots of apple juice, they came up with a plan. Now, as I said, in Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, hyenas are very closely associated with dark witchcraft and murder, and are said to have perpetrated murders for the witches. So you could pay a witch to hire a witch to kill someone, and she was said to use a hyena to do it. So the game warden and the state vet, as I said, after probably sitting around a campfire drinking a few too many apple juices, came up with a very naughty plan to get the villagers to move out of the Great Ruhaha Valley. And what they did is they found a hyena, they darted it, they then put a pair of khaki shorts on it, and then let it go very close to the villagers that they wanted to move. And the villagers took one look at a hyena wearing khaki shorts, were convinced that there was some evil afoot, black magic was on the rise, they need to get the heck out of there. So they all moved, and that's now where Ruhaha National Park is now. That particular game warden is quite famous, or was quite famous in those circles and in those days. So also one of the largest and longest. Oh, sorry, just listen to this. Oh no! Okay, now it's quite far away. Cruise campers in Buffelshoek are probably about 4.5-5 kilometers from us, but it's going to cause us to change our plan. Apparently there are wild dogs that have just arrived in front of camp, so we're going to just wait and see. They could come straight west along the Buffelshoek cut line. But let's talk about southern Tanzania. And yeah, one of the longest and most difficult sort of bouts of man-eating happened in that area, quite close to where Ruhaha National Park is, but outside, close to the town of Iringa, for those of you who know Tanzania. And there was a very large pride of lions, and what happens often when a pride of lions starts taking man-eating seriously, it's normally because a lot of their sort of natural food sources have been depleted. Hyenas and tracks, that is, and they are forced to either feed off livestock or in certain cases people. Now it was a pride that and of course that those days it wasn't very exact, so anything from about 15 to 25 lions in this pride, and for a space of about 6 years they kept a lot of the local people and the villagers in that area at ransom, and they estimated to have eaten approximately around 100 people in those 5 years before eventually the whole pride was actually shot. So man-eating still takes place to this day. It's less common, and the lion numbers are down from what they were, and the lions tend to be in the large protected areas more than anywhere else now. But places where man-eating is still relatively common is southern Tanzania, northern Mozambique are probably the two areas where the most man-eating occurs. Now, of course, there's possibilities that a lot of man-eating happens in places like South Sudan, but of course the information at the moment is very little that comes out of those areas. Now, of course, South Sudan is on my bucket list of places to go. I think, Vildi, you'd like South Sudan. So it's the largest large mammal migration in the world happens in South Sudan, but onto the grasslands around the Sud. And now there's a quiz. Who can tell me what the Sud is? And why is it such a unique feature in Africa? If you know what the Sud is, it's actually where Sudan gets its name from the Sud. You can let me know by using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. What is the Sud, and why is it so important? So the animals that migrate there are mostly white-eared cob and a form of hartebeest. There's also massive elephant populations and buffalo and lion, and all still in that area that have managed to survive through all the civil wars. Now I'm holding my fingers crossed that James and Herbie are going to be able to find some of those lions. Hopefully they have split and one's gone north and the rest have stayed. So let's go see how their tracking extravaganza is going.
I'm not sure extravaganza is the right term. I mean, extravaganza, of course, conjures up images of women with feathered helmets and not very much else. Anyway, here we are at a sword-tooth lovegrass, and you might ask yourself, and indeed me, the questions to why would be with a sword-tooth lovegrass when we should be tracking lions. And the answer is the lions, unfortunately, have gone north into Buffelshoek Hook, so we're not going to see them. Sorry about that. Never mind. We're going to now continue south down this drainage line. This is the valley of the Great Mlwamati, just off behind us here. You can see the thickening vegetation there. And we're going to head south, perhaps down towards where Shongile was left yesterday. I have no idea if we'll pick up her tracks or not, but that'll be the general idea. Then also, we might just listen to the radio and just find out where those wild dogs are going, because of course they move huge distances. The place at which they've been found in Buffelshoek is not too far from Buffelshoek Dam, and so it would be a good idea to stay sort of in this general vicinity. Buffelshoek Dam is exactly two crests over to the east of where we're sitting now. The sawtooth lovegrass, of course, well, it's called lovegrass because the inside of the seeds are heart-shaped, and it's not because of the actual saws, and the saws there, well, you can see why they're called saws, can't you, Craig? Yes. Yes, good answer. Well done. They don't actually cut anything, and they actually taste not bad. The sawtooth lovegrass's name is Eragrostis superba, and we're often asked, are there any indigenous grasses in Africa that can be eaten? And the answer is not really here. The seeds are too small. But there is an Eragrostis species called Eragrostis tef, which grows up in Ethiopia, that is still eaten there. And indeed it has become sort of, it's become a little like quinoa. You know, quinoa. If you go to somewhere fancy or you go to a particularly modern person's house, they'll have quinoa on tap, quinoa bread, quinoa in their salads, etc. Well, tef's become kind of a very fashionable grain to eat these days. It is an African grain, it comes from Ethiopia, and it's one of the only grains or grasses ever domesticated in Africa. It doesn't occur here. Good. On we go. Do you eat quinoa, Craig? I can't imagine you ever going into a shop and saying, "Excuse me, may I have a bag of quinoa, please?" Organic, obviously. No, I can't imagine it either. Excuse me, just had to spit that out. It tastes sort of oatish for a little while, and then it just tastes like spiky things in your mouth. So, the plan, as I say, is to head down the fringe of this drainage. There were some elephant sounds coming from somewhere in here. Maybe we'll bump into them, maybe we will not. And then I have been seeing increasing amounts of this. And this is the red oat grass, or the red grass as they call it here. Red oat grass in the Mara, which is of course where we're going very soon. And so do not forget about the red oat grass. It is the reason that all those wildebeest migrate over there. And over here, not very common, except in some places. And this is one of those places. There's a whole field of it here. And that means that this place will be heavily grazed. It is a very delicious grazing grass. I have decided I'm going to taste the leaf for you. Such is my selflessness. I wouldn't describe it as being overly delicious. It is quite spiky. It's got sort of it's renowned for having a slightly a sandpapery texture, and that of course is supposed to be a defense from the animals, but the animals tend not to mind too much. And then it is blessed with an awn, or the seed is blessed with an awn. There's the seed over there. There we go. And that seed has an awn attached to it. That's this thing here. And the awn helps the seed take to the air and fly. And then when it lands on fertile ground, with any luck, it grows into another red grass or Themida triandra plant. I'm just keeping an eye on vehicles driving up and down here, because and one of them is going at a great speed, which indicates to me that perhaps the wild dogs are coming this way. Anyway, Herbert is on the Game Drive radio. He will be able to tell. It's a lovely morning. We're sitting probably at about 25 degrees Celsius at this stage, which sits at about 78. Yes, X-Ranger, you're very correct. You say I've got a new stick today. Yes, I'm afraid I found a relatively decent stick yesterday. This is a temporary stick. I lost the one from yesterday. I've yet to find a good stick like the one that Aubrey found for me a little while back. Unfortunately, I don't know where I lost it actually, and I actually suspect someone else of losing it. I shall mention no names. Now look over here. These two grasses are not to be confused, Craig. Down this way. Here we go. Good. This one is not edible, like the red oat grass. It smells like turpentine. Have a smell of that, everybody. Take a deep breath in. It's like a kind of sweet turpentine. It's actually very pleasant smelling. But those aromatic oils that are in the seeds are also in the leaves, and that makes the grass very unpalatable to most animals. And of course, if you are a grass, your purpose in life is not, in fact, to feed animals. Your purpose is to reproduce. So you want to try and defend yourself against being eaten. Morning Glory, this is the species that I was talking about. You say, which species of grass are going to bring the buffalo back into this area? What would they like to eat? Well, I'll tell you, it's that Thamida triandra, or this red grass, that has taken them away from this area. It doesn't... Oh, look at this. Look at this butterfly. It doesn't grow in great profusion here. There's a butterfly. And so they're just little patches of it, but there are areas of the Sabi sand where it grows in enormous fields, and that's what pulled the buffalo away. When it turns to seed like it has now, you can see that it's got the long strawy stalks. The nutrients are removed from the leaves and sent up into the seeds, and then it becomes unpalatable, and that brings the buffalo back. And the buffalo will then head for the slightly less palatable grasses, but certainly very edible ones that we have here. And I guess Panicum would be some of them, except Panicum's changed its name. Judy H. sent me a message yesterday. It's now called Megathyrus, I think. Is it called Megathyrus? Maximus, Megathyrus maximus. It's quite a name for a grass. So they'll come back and eat that. They'll eat the bushveld signal grass, which I don't see any of around here. They will make do with this stuff here. This is called 3-orn or Aristida. It's really not very good at all. They'll make do with this sort of grass here, which is called Spirobolus. And it's not great, but for a buffalo is able to cope with fairly poor grazing grass, and even those Eragrosta species that I showed you earlier on, they would eat that too. But it's that red oat grass, or the red grass, that really, really brings the animals in here. All right, Jamie Patterson apparently has found what can only be described as a horrendous crime scene, and she's going to play Jessica Fletcher for you.
I'm not sure how good my Jessica Fletcher impersonation is going to be, but we definitely have, as James described it, a horrendous murder scene, and I'm actually going to hop out so we can try and figure out exactly what went on here. I'm just going to walk carefully because I don't want to step on the tracks of the murder suspect, because that would be tragic if we couldn't work out exactly who or what came through here and murdered some poor, hapless, innocent bird. And I'm just trying to work out, we can see there's a pile of feathers here, and it's clearly from an animal that has come through and plucked away at the feathers of the bird that it's killed. Black and white like this. Long feathers. I'm going Magpie Shrike. This was, I think, the feathers, or the murder victim was a Magpie Shrike. So we know the murder victim. We probably know the age of the murder victim as well, because Magpie Shrikes don't grow their full-length tail feathers until they reach adulthood. So this is probably an adult Magpie Shrike. There's that long feather over there. So that's where I'm getting the guess that it was, in fact, a magpie shrike that was killed. I don't think that the victim was murdered here. I think this is not the scene where the crime was perpetrated. This is just where the criminal, no, that's the wrong word to use, taking this analogy a little bit too far, where whatever ate this bird came here and ate it over here, out in the open, which is odd. We know one other thing about the identity of our attacker, and that's that it is a creature that plucks rather than breaks the feathers off. And that's because each and every single feather here is plucked clear. So it's not, the bottom of the feathers is not broken, it's been plucked. And that immediately makes me think cat. Because they do come and they do pull the feathers away from whichever bird they've happened to catch. There's a lot of downy feathers, there's some of the longer primary feathers as well. So something went to a great deal of effort to actually pluck away the feathers before eating. Now let's see if we can see any tracks. It probably wasn't dragged, it was probably carried rather than dragged and then eaten here. So what could it be? That's where it happened, I think. We walk carefully here. Look here. There's one feather over there hanging in the buffalo thorn. So what on earth caught a bird in a buffalo thorn? A bird in a buffalo thorn. That takes away my conclusion that it was a cat, because it would take a seriously determined cat indeed to climb into a thorny tree like this and try to catch a magpie shrike. This is a mystery. There is not a single track on the road. There's hyena tracks, but I don't think hyena. There's no reason that a hyena would... I mean, I've seen hyena eat things. They will gobble down a meal, feathers and all. It's a pity the light is so dull and grey and flat. We might get a better idea. So much for my Jessica Fletcher impression, because I don't think I can solve this mystery. Plucked feathers suggests it was a cat that was responsible for it. That neatly plucked. It could have been an owl, I suppose, because this has happened overnight. Probably while that magpie shrike, if it was a magpie shrike, was roosting. The mystery deepens. Something died and met a very untimely end, and something ate it. There's a possibility of a honey badger, but I've seen them consume feathers before, rather than plucking them out. So it's not a honey badger. The mystery deepens, but the mornings are full of mysteries out here, and it seems as though Brent has found yet another crime scene.
Well, the aftermath of a crime scene. Now, it's very interesting. Now, I had a good look at it, and we know it's leopard dung. You can see there's very faint female leopard tracks here. From the size, there's the track there. I would say it is little shongile, and I'm even more convinced that it's little shongile if I have a look. There's so many bits of tortoise or terrapin shell. There's a perfect little piece of shell there, and when I have a look at this one, I'm going to try to stab it. Ooh, smelly. Oh, this is... There we go. Can you see that, Vim? Now, initially oh dear. There we go. See there? So initially I thought it might be the monitor lizard claws, but now on closer inspection, it's definitely a terrapin claw. So she maybe hasn't finished digesting the monitor lizard yet, but this is definitely Shongile's tracks. It's full of terrapin claws and pieces of the shell, and there's insect, there's grasshopper legs in it, and it's quite hard. So it's from last night, but she's heading south down towards Twin Dam. So hopefully we're going to be able to find her. But that's quite cool. We're able to see, and also just because we've been spending so much time in Shongile and seeing what she's been eating, that we are able to tell that it is almost certainly Shongile just from what's in her scat. Okay, so some bad news about the wild dogs is they are heading deeper into Buffalo's Hook, so unfortunately they're not moving towards us, so we're going to keep looking for Shongile. Well done to Kim. You are correct. The Sud is one of I think it's the biggest swamp in Africa. It is on the Nile River, and of course those swamps flood, and then the flood waters go down, leaving lovely grass, and that's what causes a lot of the animals to migrate there. Historically, it's possibly one of the most wildlife-rich areas in the world, but of course it's very difficult to even go there now or get anywhere near it due to the political climate in South Sudan. Okay, so Shongile's tracks headed east down towards Twin Dams. I just want to make sure she hasn't popped out here. So basically she's walked down the whole Mwati River, or along the edge of it at least, last night. At her favorite time. Just double checking. Oh, is she in there? So I'd say that dung is from a couple of hours ago. So it's not fresh like it was deposited in the last 20 minutes. But there's still a very good chance we are going to be able to find her, unless, of course, she has ducked south. Okay, we're going to see if we can find any more fresh sign of Shongile. Let's go see how James is march through the bushes going.
I found a number of things on this tree, everyone. It is a red thorn tree, Acacia girardii, and on it has got a termite nest that has been built. You can see, well, termite nest, termite tunnels, and they've clearly been having a go here. But there are no termites. There are lots and lots of ants, however, climbing up and down of various species. There seem to be some predatory slender ants. There seem to be some black ants of indeterminate origin and species. And then, quite interestingly, the latest discovery from this year, of course, for me anyway, is the pirate fly. And it's waiting there. Can you see where my stick is, Craig? Let me try and point it out to you. Can you see the fly there?
Yeah.
Now that pirate fly is waiting for the ants to go wandering past it, whereupon it will grab one and devour it. And I've watched them for quite a long time sitting on a tree like this next to an ant sort of pathway. Oh, and the ants can go, I mean, there seems to be no set way in which it catches the ants. I've watched hundreds walk past him, and then suddenly he decides he's going to catch one, and he just walks in and grabs one. He's gone around the other side there. So I don't know what sensors he uses to catch them. Oh, I know what these ants are doing. Come over here. This is very cool. Let me just move this over here. Can you see in here? You see in there? I think there's a scale insect. Oh, you don't even need to look in here. Look in here. Look over here. They're not scale insects, but what are they? These are little pieces, I think, of ant nest. There are little holes in them. Let me just get my knife out and let's try and cut one of them open. Then I've also seen a spider there that's obviously catching the ants as well, and the fly is still lurking around there somewhere, trying to catch himself some ants. Let me just cut this open while I have your attention. I've now just cut myself open, of course, with the thorns. Now whatever this is, look, the tree's bleeding. Whatever this is has been formed, I think, from the sap of the tree. And I suspect it's that sap that is now nurturing or nourishing the ants. See that? It looks like blood. That's amazing. It's sort of... I wonder if they haven't injected something into the tree that has then resulted in the sap being exuded for their own sort of use. Look at that. Absolutely astounding. I couldn't begin to tell you what that is, though. I'm really confused. It looks like, it doesn't actually look like blood, it looks like sort of raspberry juice. Or, raspberry juice. I'm not going to taste it. It doesn't smell like anything. Amazing. And that's where the ants are concentrating their activities, it would seem. Except they're actually all over the tree. And Justin, you say, which ant wouldn't I want to be bitten or stung by? Well, there are fire ants here, which will give you a nasty nip. But there's something called a matabele ant, which you find in the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal, which is down to the southeast of where we are now. And they will give you a very nasty bite indeed. I think Steph has probably got a better idea of which ants he's not to be bitten by. I think he's been bitten by quite a few different kinds of ants, but I think the matabele ant would be the ant. It's about that big that I wouldn't want to be bitten by the most. But there are a number of species. I'm just going to have another quick look in here and see if I can't. It's only one branch that has been afflicted with this either disease or perhaps hormonal injection from the ants, and then has created these sort of, I guess, bulbs of sap with a very liquid red sap inside them. And perhaps, the sap itself, which is quite viscous, is too thick for them to eat, and maybe that sort of liquid red stuff is much easier for the ants to eat. I'm not sure. I think that's rather remarkable. Oh. And no, I thought it was a spider. Oh, hang on, look over here. This might help us solve the mystery. The ants are concentrated over here. Oh, they're going to attack me. They're going crazy now because they feel like the tree is under attack. And of course, this is the symbiotic relationship that occurs between these trees and the ants. The ants defend the tree from being bitten, and in turn, the trees don't mind various bits and pieces of usage that the ants make of them. In fact, if we look over here, you can see can you see that, Craig? There's a whole lot of sap that is being exuded by the leaves and popped over here. And I think that's what the ants are eating. I'm pretty sure that's what they're eating. And although that will have a cost to the tree, the payoff for the tree, of course, is the fact that they're acting security, and they're going into a nest just underneath this leaf here. There's a nest somewhere inside there. And if you watch, just zoom in where my finger is, if you got that there, Craig. If you watch me then touch the leaf, you'll see them all come rushing out towards me. I'm actually being attacked from the base now as well. But they'll come rushing out onto the leaf to attack me. There we are. I think that's amazing. They're now biting. Yes. Okay, off you go. Back onto the tree. Go on. Amazing. Right, let's go ahead across to Jessica Fletcher. She apparently has managed to solve the great mystery of the murder, and with the theme tune of Murder, She Wrote in your minds, let us go across.
The only theme tune I can get into my head is Midsummer Murders, for some reason. I've just got that clarinet part going up and down through my brain. However, we have managed to solve our murder. We have the footprint of the suspect, and it is a truly damning evidence indeed. I've actually been following these tracks towards where that Magpie Shrike was killed, and then back again, all the way along the road. And this is the first relatively clear one that I have seen. So let me try and show you in slightly greater depth exactly what it is you're looking at, because it's a very difficult track to actually see. So I've jumped out of the vehicle, and I'm going to go and show you exactly what it was. At first I thought they were civet tracks, until I realized that they weren't properly round. They were not exactly the right size, and it ties in beautifully with what it is, or the way in which the evidence is played out where that Magpie Shrike was brutally eviscerated. So this track is relatively small, but it looks almost exactly like a little miniature leopard track. You can see the toes are not quite as round as that of a civet track. And I know many of you are keen trackers. Let me get rid of this piece of grass as well. I know many of you are keen trackers, so it's something that you would like to closely examine and see. It's not often that we get to see this particular animal's track. And the answer to the mystery is that the Magpie Shrike was murdered by a serval. That would be my guess, just by judging from all of the evidence that we've seen. This is the size of a serval track. It's roughly, let me give you a sense of scale. It's roughly the length of, I would say, half of my index finger. So there you go. This is a tiny, perfect little cat track that I suspect belongs to a serval. It's very difficult in this light to see, and it's very difficult in this light to show you, but I do know that serval tracks are not something that we've often shown you before. So that's something for you to all add to your tracking scrapbook, with screenshots of the tracks of the different animals. And I know that there is a serval that lives around Twin Dams. I've seen it before, and I suspect that that is the one responsible for the murdering of the Magpie Shrike. And so I think we can safely say, case is closed. I think we know the answer. It explains why there's a feather in the tree, because of course servals are exceptionally good jumpers. That's one of the ways in which they hunt. They leap up into the sky and they grab birds out from mid-air in flight. So if that serval spooked the Magpie Shrike rather than climbing into the buffalo thorn, which definitely doesn't make any sense, but if that serval spooked the Magpie Shrike and it started to fly, the serval would have leapt up and caught it in mid-flight. So for those of you, oh goodness, sorry, my box is stuck. For those of you who are wondering what a serval is, I think it looks like a little micro cheetah with a short tail. I actually remembered the page number from the last time I looked this up. So let me show you a picture quickly. That is a serval over there. That is what a serval looks like. See what I mean? Kind of looks like a little mini cheetah with huge ears and a shortened tail, and known for its exceptional jumping ability. And if we go just a little bit over here, 5 centimeters is the size of the track. So that's exactly the size of the track that we've been looking at. Obviously this is an impression of what the track looks like, and I would say that that is relatively well reflected in the track that we've seen on the road. So there we go. We have our answer to the mysteries of the night last night. Our pug fanatic, a very good morning to you. Now, of course, we all want to see a serval, but you want to know how long ago I think that kill was. I think it was probably early yesterday evening, so maybe just after we closed the sunset safari. The reason that I say that, and it's difficult to actually judge, is because of when servals are active, and they're generally quite crepuscular rather than purely nocturnal. Although last night was a full moon, so that does change things ever so slightly, but they're usually mostly active around the evening time and around first thing in the morning, just as it's getting light. So that's why I'm saying it's then. The track's quite fresh, but the tracks going towards the kill, these are tracks coming back. The tracks going towards the kill have been walked over by a couple of different creatures during the course of the night. So I suspect it was probably early yesterday evening, or early yesterday night, I think would be the better way of phrasing it. But I can't be absolutely certain. I'm afraid it's one of those things where there's a bit of speculation involved. But it all ties up. Plucked feathers, something that jumped upwards, which makes sense with the feather and the buffalo thorn, and then the tracks leading back to a place where I've actually seen serval twice. Oh, in hindsight, I could have showed you a much better... No, I couldn't have. It's not easy to see. So there we go. One mystery solved. On to another, which is where the lions have gone. I have the answer to that as well, and I'm going to go towards them. The lions have been found, and we are going to go and look at them and see which lions it is that are hanging around outside the Galago camp. Apparently being watched by the guests this morning. They didn't even need to get up on game drive, they just looked out of their bedroom windows. I had a feeling that question might come up. Nicole, you want to know what the difference is between a caracal and a serval track? Not much. A caracal track is fractionally larger and slightly more filled out, but there is not a huge difference between caracal and serval tracks, and I don't claim to be an expert in telling the difference between them. The reason I say serval and not caracal with those tracks is, first of all, they're quite small and neat, and second of all, we don't really see caracal here. Yeah, but it's unusual. It's far more likely that the animal responsible was a serval, especially since I know I've seen them in this area, whereas we've never ever picked up on a caracal or signs of a caracal around this particular part of Djuma. Obviously Taylor did see one, but that was on Cheetah Plains. So a caracal, while I'm on my way to the lions, I would drive and look in my book, but I've tried that before and it doesn't actually end up so good. I tend to crash, so I'm not going to do that. Let me just show you a picture of a caracal for those of you that don't know. So there we go, that is what a caracal looks like. Kind of like a lynx, with the tips of the ears, nice and furry with long patches of black fur. Also, very similar size to a serval, a medium-sized cat, but slightly stockier, slightly more powerful than a serval, and that reflects in the size of the track, because if we look up here, although the length is roughly the same, slightly longer, they are, look again, this is an artist's impression, it's not as clear as it would be if you were looking at the actual track side by side, but this track is quite stocky, it's quite a lot wider, it's as wide as it is long, whereas serval tracks tend to be slightly more elongated and slightly more squashed together. But it's a difficult one. And if you put them in different substrates, there we go, we're done. If we put it in different substrates, well, I could easily be fooled. If it was in soft sand, or if it was in hard sand, there's a chance I would not know the difference, and it would take somebody seriously focused on tracking to do so. Now, somebody who's seriously focused on tracking is Brent, but he's tracking a leopard. Let's go and find out how it's going.
Well, we've checked the whole Mawati riverbed, and the only... there we go. So she hasn't come out, so what we're going to do is go around towards Leadwood Road. Now that's the next road across on Mumba, and we're going to hope that she's around there somewhere. She definitely hasn't popped out at Twin Dams. There's no sign of her, no tracks. We've checked her favourite little hangouts around the pans. Now there are a set of mud wallows in the bush here that she might be hunting terrapins at, so we're going to go check there. Hopefully her tracks haven't crossed towards the south. And of course, as Jamie's told you, the lions, well, I'm not sure the makeup or male, female or not, but I just know lions have been spotted in front of Gallagher Camp, and Jamie is quite close there, so hopefully she'll find them shortly, and which will be good for our cat day. And so hopefully they'll get up to something and won't just be schnoozing as lions tend to do sometimes. Now, if we get no luck with Shongile in this area, I might head towards Treehouse and see if we can have any luck with Hosana, and of course Queen Karula. Hopefully she makes an appearance. Okay, so I'm going to check very carefully from here going up to make sure none of Shongile's tracks cross to the south. Now she does spend quite a bit of time around the Mawati to the south of us. So here we go, let's have a look. And she would normally cross on one of these big game paths here if she was going to. So far, good news, no sign of her crossing. So let us check Leadwood Road. Some baboon tracks. Now, Lynn is wondering when was the last time Hosana was seen. I think not yesterday, but the day before. Tristan saw Hosana at Shabam Road, and he chased some warthogs south across the boundary. So there are some mud wallows here, but I think they're too small to hold any terrapins. I'm just going to check very slowly along Leadwood. Now, we're going to concentrate on trying to find Shongile. While we do that, let's go across to Commander Bond, who's got something that arachnophobes would be terrified of.
Indeed, terror is what we have here. That is Mrs. Tropical Tent Web Spider sitting on her tropical tent web, which looks not unlike the net that is used to catch trapeze artists when they plummet from the trapeze and bounce around on. But she's not alone. She has two husbands here, saucy minx that she is. There's one over here. In fact, there are three. There's one there, the little one in there. You see that one there, Craig?
Yeah.
Yep. It's difficult to actually point them out. Oh, in fact, these are not males. Those are not males, sorry. Those are kleptoparasites. Those are the Jacob Zumas of the spider world. And then here is the male. There he is there. Very small, much smaller than the others, and he doesn't have that mercury drop on him. Now I wonder if I can't perhaps remove... Did you see the mercury drop, Craig?
Yeah.
You did? Okay, so they shine in the sun and they look like water, and we think that's why they don't get devoured by the big owner of the web, who of course is Mrs. Tropical Tent Web Spider. But the intricacies of this are quite astounding, and how it's designed, of course, which many of you will know, is that an insect flies into one of these knockdown threads, which are not very sticky, and then down into the net underneath, and that net is very sticky, and that's where they get caught, and that's where she'll grab them. But the knockdown threads themselves are not sticky, so you see I can touch them and I don't get my hands stuck on them. They go all the way up here, all the way to the top, and I suspect she must maintain this web almost on a daily basis. I don't know if she rebuilds it, but she must do a huge amount of maintenance on it, because it is extensive, and I suspect it's quite old as well. Hugh, you want to know if they're dangerous to humans? Hugh, they're not dangerous to humans. There are very, very few spiders in South Africa that are dangerous to humans. The button spiders, the six-eyed crab spider, and the violin spider are pretty much the only ones that are dangerous to humans. The sack spider can be as well, but there are various different kinds of sack spiders, and many of them completely harmless. There is one sack spider that is what we call medically significant. And the tropical tent web spider is not medically significant, and I don't think it would do any harm at all were it to dig its fangs into you. I suspect it might try and defend itself if you picked it up. It might try and bite you, and certainly some of the jumping spiders can give you a bite that feels a little bit like a thorn's been stuck into you, but other than that, really, I think it's more the physical pain of having your skin pierced rather than any actual venomous or envenomation. So no, they're not very dangerous at all. Far less dangerous, of course, than this. There we are. That, of course, is a deeply toxic substance, and that is the latex of the tambuti tree. Now, Taylor, you're wondering, do they prefer one particular side of the web? The spiders tend to prefer to be in the middle of the web, and we gave her a bit of a fright, but she was hanging directly in the center of the web, so I think that they prefer to be in the center. That is the cleverest place to be, of course, otherwise half your web becomes a bit of a waste. Sorry about the sound, everybody. I had to scratch my head. There was a fly biting it. I do apologize for that. And there was something else I wanted to show you here. Oh yes, look over here, Craig. Something has walked past here. Something large. And it has been covered in mud. And it was about this tall. And if I was to guess, especially given the amount of mud that there is down below here, it must be one of two things, an elephant or a rhinoceros. And this is the kind of path down which a rhino might walk. There are no rhino tracks here, but I wonder if this isn't an old rhino sort of a path down which the rhino has walked, and he's left mud on the top of the tree here. And you can see here he's rubbed and probably just stood. It may have been an elephant, but probably just stood here considering life for a while. And there is a black rhino that comes through here from time to time. Black rhino eat tambuti trees quite a lot, but you can tell immediately if a tree has been set on by a black rhino because hang on. So I was saying that the branches get bitten off at an exactly 45-degree angle. Now, I mean, you can't tell from that, but it's a very clean break. So maybe this was a black rhino that came through here. I think I'm grasping at straw slightly. I think it's much more likely to have just been an elephant that walked down here and broke the tree. But it would be nice to think of a black rhino mysteriously walking along this path. Good.